Welcome to the Chaos Sector. We return to the Matrix. Someone has been revealed as the DoorDash driver, and it's not Bonnie. Oh really? Well, that throws a monkey wrench into the equation. Yet, there are a few problems with this alleged DoorDash driver, and many have already spotted it. Let's just say, well, this person is impersonating the DoorDash driver. That's our opinion, and we'll break it down soon enough. Wait, let's touch on that for a moment. There is a lot of impersonating going on in this case, right? It is reported that Eric Gower was the private driver. But in the Law and Crime interview, the person claiming to be the private driver was not Eric Gower from the university, clearly. He stayed in Pullman, claimed to stay 1,200 feet from Koberger's doorstep, and was retired. This is not, I repeat, this is not Eric Gower from the university. Yet, has anyone noticed that the conflicting information has not been talked about much? We've done it, of course, deeming the individual as Batman, but it doesn't seem many investigators find this alarming. Everyone is going with the claim that it was Eric Gower from UI. Who is giving you this information? Moscow PD, remember? Then we have the DoorDash driver, who was unidentified until recently. Apparently someone tracked the Dasher ID, and it came back to some lady whose arrest was recently released via Pullman PD body cam. Her claims of being the driver, you know what? We'll get into that. Let's go back to a few things. Speaking of Pullman, someone was arrested at guess what, a pool party in Pullman. And that would be none other than Clyde. Yep, let's break it down. Quote, on July 7th, 2018, Mr. Robinson spent the afternoon with Bright Johnson, drinking beer and spending time at 2 different apartment complex pools. Later in the evening, the two joined several other friends and acquaintances and went to various private parties around Pullman. Now let's briefly stop here. We already stated that Bonnie and Clyde stomped around the college campuses, right? So this is confirming that Bonnie and Clyde were always in those college circles, from Oregon, Washington, and of course Idaho. Let's continue. The group eventually returned to the indoor pool area located at the campus commons apartments on the early morning of July 8th. Mr. Robinson had plans to meet up with his friend Madison Geedle. When Miss Geedle arrived at the pool and saw Mr. Johnson, she retreated to her car and called Mr. Robinson, who came outside. Miss Geedle informed him that the night before she had been at a party where Mr. Johnson groped her and that seeing him was giving her a panic attack. Miss Geedle left and Mr. Robinson, who was visibly frustrated, returned to the pool area to find Mr. Johnson eating Mr. Robinson's food. Wow, he's eating your food? Mr. Robinson angrily confronted Mr. Johnson about eating his food, and Mr. Johnson got into the hot tub. Mr. Robinson kicked a cell phone charger into the pool and asked Mr. Johnson to get in the pool and retrieve it. Mr. Johnson entered the pool where he had difficulty retrieving the charger from the bottom of the pool. Wait a minute, this doesn't add up. So Johnson is following the demands of Clyde, indicating he feared him, yet he was eating his food prior? Seems he didn't care much about Clyde. This has to be a lie. It didn't unfold this way, but let's continue. While standing on the side of the pool, Mr. Robinson hit and kicked Mr. Johnson one time. After retrieving the charger, Mr. Johnson handed it to Mr. Robinson and pulled himself out of the pool to sit on the edge with his feet still in the pool. Okay, now so far, Clyde has taken his anger out on Johnson, more so for eating his food apparently, not for groping Miss Geedle. It doesn't mention Clyde confronting Johnson over the alleged groping, right? So can we suggest it never happened? And Miss Geedle simply wanted Clyde to assault him out of spite? Yep, it appears so, but let's continue. Quote, while Mr. Johnson was sitting on the edge of the pool, Mr. Robinson took a swing at Mr. Johnson's face and then began punching and kicking him. Mr. Johnson attempted to escape across the pool deck into the hot tub, where Mr. Robinson caught him and attempted to hold Mr. Johnson's head underwater. Okay, we have to eliminate the claim he was eating Clyde's food, based on this fear Johnson has. Which means they simply wanted to attack Johnson, perhaps he wasn't, quote, cool enough. Mr. Johnson managed to writhe away, and at this point, 2 of the bystanders in the pool area ineffectually attempted to intervene before returning to their pool chairs to continue drinking and watching the incident unfold. Mr. Robinson continued to pace around the hot tub, attempting to hit and kick Mr. Johnson, who retreated to the middle of the hot tub. Mr. Robinson threw a chair at Mr. Johnson, then removed his belt and tried to whip Mr. Johnson with it. He then proceeded to throw several empty beer bottles at Mr. Johnson. From the sound of it, Johnson appears to be a college student from our perspective. Clyde, damn near 40 years old, is bullying a college student who perhaps just wanted to have fun and flirt with Miss Geedle. She didn't like him, and we all know how spiteful floozies behave when they don't like a guy. That's right, they get another guy to beat them up. Mind you, Clyde is a drug dealer and is feared in those college circles, as this incident confirms it. But we also have to keep in mind that Clyde was allegedly let's just say he was a, quote, manager of women workers. And Geedle could have been one of his employees, who the college kid Johnson tried to hook up with. She didn't like him, so he was beaten simply off of that alone. Yep, that's how it goes. Let's continue, though. Mr. Robinson eventually emptied his pockets and jumped into the hot tub, at which point Mr. Johnson got out of the tub and tried to run away. Ooh, he's really frightened of Clyde, right? This has to be a college student, because a grown man around Clyde's age would not be running away like this in fear. Might be intimidated a bit, but not on this level. He ran into a column, fell down, and Mr. Robinson proceeded to hit and kick Mr. Johnson while he was on the ground, aiming several kicks at his head. Now this indicates that Clyde had no problem in killing Mr. Johnson. The bystanders finally intervened, and Mr. Johnson was able to escape. The entire episode, from the time Mr. Robinson initially hit and kicked Mr. Johnson to when Mr. Johnson escaped, lasted approximately 8 minutes. Mr. Johnson reported the incident to the Pullman Police Department, who was able to obtain the security camera footage of the incident from the campus commons apartments. They also interviewed Mr. Johnson, who reported injuries to his ribs, jaw, and eye socket. Now in this case, Clyde was charged and convicted for second-degree assault. What this proved was that Clyde is a very dangerous and violent individual who does not take disrespect lightly. He could have potentially killed Johnson at that pool party and perhaps thought nothing of it afterwards. Based on the case, it appears there was a fabrication of what happened. The female Geedle was not groped. She told Clyde about it, yet he didn't confront Johnson about that. He confronted him about eating his food. That doesn't make sense. So it's likely that Geedle just didn't like Johnson and plotted to have him beaten up at the party. Then you have the claim Johnson was eating Clyde's food at the party, yet he was running away from him in fear? How can you have the balls to eat his food, but at the same time, scared to death of him? Doesn't make sense. He was assaulted at the party and was more than likely a younger male. Clyde was the fake tough guy, sold his petty drugs in the college circles, and used intimidation very well. It was alleged, according to Bonnie's mother, that he abused her and perhaps even got her hooked on some type of drugs also. Whenever there is such a huge age gap, usually there is some form of control, especially in that drug-infested environment. The mother claimed that she tried to leave him, but Clyde threatened her with violence, so she decided to go back to him. Bonnie is no angel, but Clyde was almost 20 years her senior, so it's obvious he introduced her to that lifestyle. It's also alleged that she was being used as a woman worker for Clyde, and the relationship wasn't actually, well, a relationship. It's possible that these two will have a falling out, and it could be due to the pressure of this case breathing down their necks. Clyde only shows loyalty to himself, while Bonnie was friends with many of those college peers before hooking up with him. So if there is a silver lining somewhere, it would be Bonnie deciding to snitch Clyde out to save face. Because the closer we get to the truth, the more likely individuals will start to fold. I see Clyde turning his back on Bonnie, and she returns the favor. Yep, criminals are not friends, they're opportunists.
Yep, when you have partners in crime, such as Bonnie and Clyde, that partnership goes out the window when the pressure builds up. Chances are Clyde was abusive to Bonnie, based on how he assaulted the individual at the party. Like mentioned, Bonnie is not innocent by any means, yet she was associated with those housemates at some point, and that may have been the link from the outside. Clyde advises Bonnie to convince those housemates to allow them to set up operations in the home. Maybe this came by way of Dylan, who mysteriously was allowed to live there as a 20-year-old freshman. There are circumstances, but that reason, I believe, was used to establish the plan of drug trafficking. This is the direct link between Dylan inside the home and Bonnie and Clyde. That's why Dylan was protected, you see. She is linked to the motive, and that motive is linked to Bonnie and Clyde. And they are linked to the bigger fish. As we stated time and time again, Dylan provides the trail to the motive. She provides the trail to who was responsible for the murders. There is no escaping this fact. In our audio analysis of the so-called fake audio from the next-door neighbor, we heard a male mention Emma, right? Everyone has heard that audio, depicted as fake by the mainstream media, who claimed the neighbors also stated it was fake. The reverse effect here. When the mainstream media debunks something, it's usually true or a fact. When they claim something is true or a fact, it's usually fake. Well, the male states, quote, "Just get the F over here, Emma," unquote. There was a male heard, which sounded like Clyde also, when it appeared there was a physical altercation taking place. If the housemates were involved in drug trafficking or indirectly involved, and something went wrong, isn't it likely that Bonnie and Clyde would pay them a little visit? After all, they are the primary supplier of drugs in Moscow, so they definitely would take a trip to the home if there was something wrong. They are serious about their money because the criminals above them, who they work for, are even more serious about their money, you see. Quote, they say violence doesn't solve anything. I'll turn the other cheek purple and red if you take what belongs to me. Unquote. This is from April of 2022, about 7 months before the murders. What Clyde is saying, and has already proven, is that if you disrespect him, take something from him, or even owe him, he will resort to violence, and he doesn't really care how far it can go. Now, we are not suggesting that Clyde was one of the murderers, but he definitely is involved, along with Bonnie. Now, this incident was in Pullman, my friends, which was about 2 minutes from Steptoe Village Apartments, which is where Koberger resided. There's also a hotel not too far from the area called Residence Inn Pullman. Yep, sure Clyde and Bonnie met a lot of clients at that location. Interesting that Clyde was arrested in Pullman, Bonnie was arrested in Pullman, and the so-called DoorDasher was arrested in Pullman, and the so-called private driver resided in Pullman. Seems everyone had flocked to Pullman after Koberger's arrest, right? Damage control. Going back to Bonnie's DUI, yeah, we went over it, but let's think about how knowledgeable Bonnie was in the town of Pullman. In her arrest, she mentioned how she was at the Timber and went to the Emporium, then would come back to the Timber to get her passenger's vehicle. Well, it's quite ironic that after approximately 2 months since Koberger had been arrested, Bonnie is all up in his neighborhood, because those establishments are right smack dab in Cougar Town. So obviously she networked in Pullman. Also, if you examine that stop, Pullman PD never searched her. When someone is arrested, regardless for what reason, police officers are supposed to search the individual before placing them into their custody. Well, I guess it didn't matter because she had drugs in her ass crack. She waited till the officer left the room and cunningly took the tissue from the counter and placed the drugs into the trash bin. We know this is what she's doing because Bonnie is keeping laser eye focus on the door and when the officer will return. While keeping this laser eye focus, she is grabbing the drugs out of her ass crack with the tissue and then places it into the trash bin. This is a tactic used by drug dealers and drug users where you place drugs in your ass crack. So when the officers search you upon a stop, they won't find it. If there aren't any drugs or weapons discovered on an individual, usually whatever crime they committed or suspicion doesn't include possession of drugs, and that adds to jail time such as a DUI. Bonnie learned from her boss, who is also her partner in crime, Clyde. The interesting thing, though, is this is on camera, and apparently Pullman PD never suspected anything with Bonnie's behavior and body language. She's clearly up to something, based on her eyes. They don't seem too familiar with the culture of drug dealers, because in another state, where drug dealers are constantly being arrested, well, for one, they would have been searched upon arrest, and once in custody, this footage would indicate suspicious activity. Nevertheless, we see the evidence. Now, why would Bonnie hide the drugs in her ass crack? To make sure when she gets stopped, which is always a possibility, officers won't find it. Why would she then dump those drugs into a trash bin? To make sure she doesn't have it in her possession when she is officially in jail. Once the officer returns, Bonnie is essentially guarding the trash bin from the officer's view. Although he may not even be focused on it, Bonnie instinctively is being cautious and defensive, because what's inside the trash bin? Once she was being shipped off, she calls her brother because she says, quote, if you go to dad's house, unquote. Now she told her brother to get money out of her safe for bail, which was $500, and even told him to get a little money for himself for the inconvenience. Oh yes, Bonnie with the greenbacks, hey? Yet with no actual job. Oh well, I guess what they do is considered a job. But I think this screenshot sums it all pretty well. Bonnie standing in the police station with a cougar on the wall, which would be the mascot for Washington State University. A symbolic display of being key component of framing Koberger. Yep.
If you haven't put the pieces together yet, the frame originated in Pullman, Washington. Of course, we have the dropped charges of Bonnie and Clyde in Caden Young's death by overdose. Caden Young, originally from Boise, Idaho, Dylan's hometown, was actually a student at UI. And get this, he was a member of Alpha Kappa Lambda. That's interesting. Now, how can the charges be dropped with Clyde's criminal record? I mean, this guy has a rap sheet, and he, along with Bonnie, was literally tracked down in the investigation, and somehow their charges were dropped. They were fucking distributing cocaine, which was laced with fentanyl, for fuck's sake. It doesn't matter about the amount. Authorities arrived at the residence and found all types of drug paraphernalia, large amounts of cash, drug baggies. I mean, how do they evade prison time here? Now keep in mind, this was close to a year after the Idaho murders. The only thing that seems logical here is that Bonnie and Clyde are informants. Yet, informants to what exactly? Because if the murders were drug-related, then it appears they would have exculpatory evidence for Koberger, the person they helped frame in Pullman. A pickle of a situation. And this is why the trial keeps getting delayed. There are too many loose ends to proceed. I'll touch on the so-called DoorDash driver, can't help myself. That woman has been paid off to testify, but she was not the DoorDash driver. That would be Bonnie. Think about it. Her identity was never revealed early on in the PCA. She was never interviewed by the likes of Law and Crime, News Nation, and other news networks. She just pops up and claims she saw Koberger. That would have been all in the PCA, at least an interview. Let me guess, she was so traumatized by the event, she didn't want to speak to anyone? Oh, she stopped DoorDashing also? So, if you're coming out claiming to be a witness that night, then this means you should have been a key witness, right? Why wasn't there any reports of this eyewitness account then? What she stated while in police custody would have to be the same thing she told Moscow PD, right? So it appears Moscow PD knew this and not only kept her anonymous, but also didn't even provide any accounts from the DoorDasher. Isn't that strange? You can keep the person anonymous as the DoorDash driver, but also provide their eyewitness accounts also, right? Unless she's not the DoorDash driver and is pretending to be the driver, redirecting everyone's attention from the real DoorDash driver, which was Bonnie. Another attempt at fooling the public was immediately shot down as soon as that body cam footage was leaked out. It was exposed so fast, I wouldn't be surprised if that person is never heard from again, especially not in trial as witness. It was supposed to be a nail in Koberger's coffin, just like all the other nonsense dumped out there. If the guy is guilty, then there's no need to force anything. Bonnie and Clyde are going down. No charges will be dropped this time around. Okay, let's just stop right here. This is the chaos sector.